Hello everybody, thank you for coming. So, my name is Megan, for those of you who do not know me, and this is one of the other co-founders, Cassie. So, we just wanted to say thank you to everybody who came out, whether you are a survivor, a family member of a survivor, a partner.
There you go.
Hi! Oh, God. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. So we just want to say thank you, whether you're a survivor, a family member of a survivor, a loved one, a supporter. We thank you all for coming. We weren't sure who was going to show up, if anybody was going to show up. We didn't know if we were just going to have the survivors here, and we were coming whether anybody did or not. So I really appreciate you guys for coming. It means a lot to all of us. Those of us who know somebody who's gone through domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, know how serious this is. There's not many of us in the room today, but we're going to keep doing this, whether there's one person in the room or 100 people in the room. So I just want to say thank you guys. It does mean a lot to people who have gone through it. So the first person that we have speaking today is Tiffany Klein. I met Tiffany a really long time ago. We actually met through a friend, and that friend is no longer with us. She was a big part of my life and my daughter's life. Tiffany did an event for my daughter. She was a guest judge when my daughter was fundraising for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And Tiffany came with our friend Phyllis, who passed away. So Tiffany, you want to come on up? Alright. Could you tell us just a little bit about yourself outside of what you do?
Okay, I'm Tiff Klein. Some of you from Scranton might remember I did a food photography business for a long time and helped out a lot of local mom and pop restaurants. During that time, so 2009 to 2018, I was with an abuser. I was just one of them. But right now, I live down in Plains. I have a career in insurance and radio advertising. I am a domestic violence speaker. I'm a volunteer with the Gabby Petito Foundation. If you remember, she was a blonde that went missing in 2021, made national news. Her fiance at the time, they traveled across the country and he killed her and left her in Utah. So I have a very similar story to her, and over the years I became friends with her parents. I was just with them in Las Vegas 2 weeks ago. I know we're going to be talking about that later, so if you have questions, I can talk about certain things. And I did sign an NDA, so there's certain things I can't talk about, but I was in 2 abusive relationships. One was physical, mental, financial, sexual, emotional, and verbal, and the second one was narcissistic, and he did more damage than the one that strangled me. So I just want to talk about all aspects of abuse because they don't always have to hit you to be an abuser.
So many people don't realize that abusive relationships often start out. No? How about now? Okay. Many people don't realize that abusive relationships often start out being perfect. Could you tell us some of your early warning signs or red flags of looking back when you see those?
So in 2008, I made the mistake of meeting a man online. I was in college in Kentucky, and he was from this area. And I thought it was fate because my grandfather was born and raised in Dunmore. So I came out, I met him, and then he came out and met my family. And a few weeks later, I packed everything I had and moved back to Pennsylvania. So I did grow up here until I was about 10. And he was charming, charismatic, told me everything I wanted to hear. I'll get you out of a small town, and we'll take over the world together, and just gave me all the attention. And as soon as we got our own apartment, probably maybe 3-4 weeks in, is when he first hit me. and he took a mirror, and I think it's your microphone that's, he took a mirror and smashed it over my head, took a computer desk, hit me, I had to get staples in my head, and a lot of people would say, well, why don't you just go home? And that's the most ignorant thing you can say to anybody in a domestic violence relationship. I was scared, I had no support system here, I didn't have a car, and I used to be a really tough, big backbone person, and when I used to say that would never happen to me, and it happened. So, because my family was 600 miles away, I had no friends here, I was scared to tell my family because my mom probably would have showed up. She was born and raised in Jersey, and she probably would have taken him out. So, I didn't want to tell anybody, and it just went on for years. We moved, and it would get better, and then it would get worse, and I felt bad for him because of his childhood. And I didn't understand that, you know, I was probably 20, 21, that, you know, you have to get to a point in your life where you can't blame other people for your actions. So I always felt bad for him because his family screwed him up pretty good. And I always use that as an excuse. He just needs to be loved. He just needs someone to love him. And the more I loved him, the worse he got with me. He had that mask. He could turn it on and turn it off no matter who was in the room. And everybody was like, oh, Randy, he's fine. But they didn't know the darkness. You know, he had strangled me. He broke everything I had. He smashed my windshield, slashed my tires, chased me with a knife. And the neighbors never called the cops. Nobody wanted to get involved. There was times where he locked me in my car for 12 hours and interrogated me because he needed a resolution on how our relationship would get better. And if you want to keep asking questions, so I can just go. There's 9 years of it, so you might have to interrupt me a little bit.
So you talk about a lot about how your abuse was physical. The reality is it's rarely just like physical. So could you tell us how some of those non-physical elements of abuse show up in your relationship?
He wanted me to be something I wasn't, and when I wasn't, I got abused for it, verbally, mental, emotionally, and physical. And there'd be times where he was great, and you'd be like, oh my God, he's finally changing, he's finally treating me better, this is, you know, we're gonna last. And then he would cheat on me, and then things would happen, and when I'd bring it up, I was the worst person in the world, I was crazy, I was neurotic, you know, bipolar and all this stuff, and I don't know what I'm talking about when I had the proof right in front of me. That happened to me twice with 2 different guys. He was just very, you know, he was that guy that got you flowers after he hit you and said, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Like, that's not a cliche. This is real, this happens. He would wake up and you could see the darkness in his eyes, and I knew I was in for it that day. So I would just take an extra shift at work, just so I didn't have to emotionally deal with his bullshit all day. And it just got to a point where your brain becomes mush. You can't even decide if you want to wear red or blue because you cannot think about anything that makes sense. So there was days where I wanted to leave, and then there was days I was afraid to, but I couldn't even decide what color dress I wanted to wear. Do you think I could make decisions on how I was going to get out? So, you know, it's really hard, but it's his charismatic mask that he wore that it was so hard to tell people the truth because nobody wanted to believe me. And then that beat me down even more. So it really did make me feel like I was going crazy.
We talk about how isolation is a big tactic used in abusive relationships. Did that ever happen to you?
I would say because I moved here away from my family, I think he did it without me realizing it. You know, I had to move here for him and start a life, and he would always talk bad and poorly about my family, and I had a really strong support system before I left Ohio, and he just put it in my head that my family was bad people. All the friends I made, you know, they're bad, you don't need to hang out with them, and it got to a point where I just depended on him, and I lost everything about myself, and every job I had, he ruined because he wanted me home right then. I had to leave my job, and it was just, yeah, it was more physical than, or it was more than just physical abuse.
So for those of you who don't know, leaving or the moments before you leave an abusive relationship is actually the most lethal for the survivor. So like literally the moments before you walk out that door is the most dangerous. Was there a time where you knew you had to get out?
there was a lot of times, but the one right before I left, he wanted, and this is where my story with Gabby comes in. Right before I left, we lived in Oliphant, and he wanted to have me co-sign a van for him that looked like Gabby Petito's van. And I refused. So when we got home, he literally strangled me and threw all my stuff out on the lawn, and he just kept hitting me, and I packed what I could, and luckily, 2 weeks prior, I met a woman on Craigslist who was looking for a roommate, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but at that moment, I took what I could fit in my car, and I left it, and I never went back. And that lady had me live with her for 6 months, and she's the reason why I'm where I'm at today. But that was I think that was the second time he ever actually strangled me. And when someone strangles you, there's I think the stats is 750% more. You will end up dead. It's not a question, it's not a what if, it's going to happen. He says he doesn't remember doing it, which is a cop-out. He broke my nose because I confronted him cheating, and he punched me right in the face. Like, it's how I'm able to get up and function and be successful. I question myself, but I am in therapy. I've been in therapy for a long time, and I work through my own demons, and I've come a long way, so it doesn't define me.
When you made that decision to leave, or after you left, what was the biggest hurdles you faced?
He put a tracker on my new boyfriend's car that I met after him, and I kept looking back at my friend Melissa, because I don't want to put her on the spot, but she and I have actually my second ex, we kind of dealt with the same guy. I mean, she knows who he is, and he did the same things to her. So he put a tracker on his car. He stalked me, stalked him, was using my credit card information to buy everything that he wanted, and I had to fight that all the time. And when I would see him at an event, he would threaten me. But after a while, when I didn't give him the attention that he wanted, and I didn't go crawling back, he eventually stopped. He left me alone, and not that this is an excuse, but about 4 years ago, he reached out to me to apologize and said I never deserved anything he put me through. He sent me a lot of money to pay off the debts he put me in, and again, it wasn't an excuse. But he did get to a point where he realized he was the problem and it wasn't me. I made peace with him, and I don't hold any anger towards him. It's the second one, but I said that was narcissistic, that really put me in a bad place, and I can't explain it, but I think that's, he didn't like the fact that he lost control, and he eventually just stopped because he moved on to his next victim that gave him the ego boost and he could control, and she eventually left him too.
So leaving is really hard. Probably one of the hardest things that a person can do. You're leaving everything. So when you left, was there a person or an organization or any specific act of kindness or literally anything that kind of helped or was said or done for you that helped you?
I don't think anybody really helped me except that woman I moved in with, just giving me a safe space. But I didn't talk to anybody about anything until 2021 when I saw Gabby's story. So I have to say that she and her parents helped me start speaking out, and I was in a second domestic violence relationship, and I realized that, I was in one even though he wasn't hitting me, and I just had enough, and I started talking out and telling everybody my story, and I was ashamed for a little bit, but I don't care now. It's a part of my life, but I've overcome it, and it doesn't make me a weak person, a broken person. I'm not crazy. I'm not all things people want to say, and I try to just be a voice just to help one other person.
Could you tell us a little bit about what your recovery journey has looked like?
I do have social media. I did make a digital journey over the years, and I do post about it a lot. I'm not silent about it. But it took a lot of self-reflection, why I was attracted to people like that, and it came full circle because my mom was abused, and she left when I was 8, so I had a really good stepdad, and I still do. I'm going to be 38 in 2 weeks, so a good dad for 30 years, but I guess it was just familiar, and I had to really dig down deep inside on why I kept going back to these same type of men. And when I started speaking, it's when I really started doing therapy and self-discovering, and just thinking and having good friends and hobbies, and I threw myself into work. I always have. when I'm having a really bad day, it's when I do the best at work. I'm in sales. I don't know, that's just what I do. But I've always turned the negative into a positive and tried my best to focus on what I could do rather than what I didn't get to do.
Would you say that your speaking and advocacy work has helped you heal?
100%. I've met a lot of people who've been through it. A lot of people message me thanking me because they're afraid to talk. I'm going to be having a lot of survivors on my podcast. I do have 2 podcasts. I'll have Megan post them. But just hearing somebody say thank you for talking, it saved me. I left my boyfriend or I left my girlfriend. You know, I have guys message me too. I have 2 male friends who are abused by women, and it's not a joke. It does happen. So I've been trying to be a voice for them, and I think just speaking out does help me heal, and telling my story makes me realize that it's not my fault. It's nobody's fault, and everybody you know knows somebody who was abused or is abused or will be abused, so it's not a dirty secret, and helping other people is what helps me heal.
If someone in the audience suspects that a friend or someone they know is in an abusive relationship, what would you suggest that they say or do for them to help that person get out?
First, I do not say, that I said earlier, do not say, well, why don't you just leave? That, I cannot stand that. Don't judge. Don't ask them what they did wrong. Don't ask them what they could do better. Just listen. Sometimes just being a soundboard and not giving an opinion is all somebody needs.
From your own personal experience, what are the most common misconceptions of people who have survived abusive situations?
It's the most common, say that again?
What are the most common misconceptions that other people think of people?
That we're broken, we're weak, we're emotionally damaged, we have emotional baggage, we can't keep a good relationship, we're crazy, we're neurotic, we're bipolar, we're not strong women or men, we're not worth things, it must have been our fault, we stayed so we must have enjoyed it. I think those are what I hear the most.
Did you interact with law enforcement or social workers when you left?
I have a degree in child family services, so I had a background in helping kids with loss and trauma. And with Randy, I called the cops and they didn't do anything. And in Pennsylvania, you have to press charges. They can't just arrest somebody. And I was always afraid that if I did, it would get worse. And the cops would give me call my number if this happens again, or they give me a brochure, but they weren't, a lot of cops aren't educated, and it's not a fault to a point, but a lot of them do know the signs and they ignore it, or they don't. And I think, I just gave up, because I just felt like it was me against them, and they never believed anything I said, and didn't ever do anything, and so they always made me feel like I was the problem.
Is there anything you wish they would have done?
I don't know if I have an answer for that, because I know, they're in the law, they can only do so much with what they're allowed to do. They did give me resources. I don't really think I wish they did anything else. I don't think they really, at that time, think that they could, without me pressing charges. And some people may ask me why I never did, but again, it's because I was terrified to. I mean, this guy was a level, and I'm going to say it, a level crazy, where he was doing yoga on a sidewalk over by St. Anne Street when we lived there for a while, and he was being a nuisance to the public at like 2 in the morning, and the cop said, if you don't leave, we're going to tase you, and he looked at them and said, tase me. He did not have any fear of authority, and they tased him, and he got out of jail, and so it was like, he wasn't afraid of them, so what was me pressing charges on him, what was that going to do? So it just seemed like I was losing at my own tug of war with him, and I just gave up fighting after a while, because he did whatever he wanted and had no consequence. One of the things that sticks out was he would lock me in my car. We'd go to Walmart, and he would interrogate me for 12, 13 hours like he would in my house, and I would sit there and sit there and sit there, and he would kick my glove box and break it. He broke my key off in the ignition. and punched me in the face that time too because I confronted him with something. And it was just always something that he did that I had to pay for when I voiced how I felt. So it was just, what was it, everyone's saying, well, you should have pressed charges. You know what he would have done when he got out? It wasn't worth that risk for me. And I wish now that I did. I definitely would today. But when you're in it, it's so hard to just, hold somebody accountable when your life is at risk.
Was he ever financially abusive towards you?
He was, he got to a point where even though I made my own money, I wasn't allowed to buy things that I wanted because he wanted to be a minimalist after a while. I wasn't allowed to buy certain clothes because it wasn't, he wanted me to have things that I could use in any type of weather. It just got to a point where it was his vision. I couldn't get my nails done because, we had a car payment or this, that, the other. And it was just always monitoring what I was buying, but he could go out and do whatever he wanted.
Did that financial abuse aspect make it more difficult for you to leave and stay away from him?
No, I've always been a very independent woman for the most part when it came to money and finances, and I'm pretty good with money, so I had my own account that I would stash some stuff in on the side, but I never had to talk finances over with him. But if he found out I spent something that he didn't approve of, that's when we went to battle.
So abuse often strips away a person's confidence and sense of self. I would say more than often. What did the process of rediscovering your passions, your strengths, and identity look like?
Sorry, sometimes I have to think back. At the time, I had met John, who has a PFA on him right now, and it's the first time I think meeting him helped me find myself again, because he wasn't like that when I first met him. Well, he was, I just wasn't seeing it. So I threw myself into him without taking that time for myself to heal and really think about things, so I just was codependent and jumped to the next one. And I focused on that. So I kind of took all the trauma I had from 9 years, and I just pushed it aside like it didn't matter. I got this, I'm good, and I shouldn't have ever done that. But I used him, I guess, as a distraction, and had, the one thing that I did get from him that was good was I made a lot of friends I met from him that I still have to this day. So that was the good that came, and having those friends helped me get through a lot of the trauma I had from the past, and just being a soundboard.
What about your speaking and advocacy? Did that help you find your confidence again?
It did. When I started speaking and being a part of the Gabby Petito Foundation, I did get my confidence back because I knew I wasn't alone, and I wasn't speaking to the wall, a brick wall, and people did want to listen. And it wasn't about me and my story. It was just letting somebody know that they can leave, and it's not, they're not alone.
If we want to prevent domestic violence in the next generation, what conversation should we be having with our children and young people today about healthy boundaries, consent, and mutual respect?
I'm going to use myself for an example. I don't remember anybody in school ever teaching us about domestic violence. It was kind of one of those things that they shove under the rug. It happens, the teachers know it happens, and it's never talked about. I think there should be a class on domestic violence. I know, you don't want our kids to expose to that. They need to be exposed to it because it's a real thing. There needs to be classes that help you be independent. Learn how to use your own money and file your taxes and take care of yourself. I know they used that home ec, mine was a waste, but I don't even know if they do that anymore. Mine didn't teach me anything. But they need to talk about it because from talking with Gabby's parents, the stuff's going down to as low as 5th and 6th grade that kids are dating, and it's starting that because they're seeing what's happening in their household, and it's just a repetitive pattern, and it needs to be recognized in the schools. I definitely, and Gabby's parents are doing that. They're going to schools and they're speaking, but it needs to be implemented in every curriculum across the country, not just when people come to speak about it.
So I was just reading, the FBI released a report for the last 5 years. In February, they just released this report. And they said 75% of domestic violence cases were high school students. Or people under the age of 21. And that blew me away that we aren't teaching people at all. We're not teaching the young children.
it's change, you know what I mean? It's look the other way, don't get involved. What happens behind closed doors, you know, the old saying, nobody needs to know your dirty laundry, and that needs to stop, and that's why we're here.
I think you're right. So kind of going off of that, what does a truly safe and informed community look like to you?
Theoretically, a safe community where people talked about it, where people weren't ashamed of themselves or what they've been through, that they would feel safe to talk about it with anybody, at any time, anywhere, and didn't have to private message people to tell them what's going on, or hide on social media, or hide from their abuser, because if they say something, they may lose their life. That would be my theoretical safe community, but you guys showing up is creating a safe community, so thank you for coming.
Alright, so our final question, if someone is listening right now and they're in a situation where they feel completely trapped, what do you want them to know?
Not alone. And real quick, I'm going to hit on the second, the narcissistic relationship, because I know people need to hear that it happens when you're not even being hit. My ex that has a PFA on has a degree in psychology. He has a master's in psychology, and he worked with kids. And he was malicious and intentful. He plotted and planned, and he preyed on vulnerable women. And messed with my head and other women's heads so bad that he would do something and you would put the proof in front of his face and he'd say, believe whatever you want. I had it right in front of me, so like, I took him to court because he, the whole time he was breaking up with me, he didn't want me. I was neurotic, I was crazy. Only when I called him out on him cheating and whatever it was he was doing. Where he would disappear for a month because it took me a while to realize that's when he was going out and having his little rendezvous around Wilkes-Barre. So, he always made me the problem, and I just need to talk about this. So I have a PFA on him, he wanted me, he didn't. He wanted me, he didn't. And then when I finally had enough courage to just end it with him, after he called my best friend fat at Old Time Charlie's, I had it. I was done, I swung the door open, he made an ass of himself in that bar. Everybody finally saw the mask come off, and it was like 6 years. And Megan's and my friend Phyllis, she saw this. She was the only one that saw it and heard it. And everybody else was in denial. And everybody said, you're crazy, Tiff. This is, really would tell me, like, oh, I think you're just making this up because you're bitter. Until I let it out and let the truth out. And now he has a PFA on him because he couldn't stand losing control. And he would harass me and stalk me at my friend's house. He would drive by. I had to get cameras and change my locks because things were being misplaced in my house, or things were showing up in my house that weren't mine. As soon as I did that, I changed everything, it all stopped. And I took him to court, and then he violated it, and I brought him back. And the cops, they put the PFA, they extended it for another year, so it expires this January. And now he's stalking me online and is having his friends do it. I have the screenshots. The guy just doesn't stop. But the cops haven't done anything about that because there's no actual proof. Even though the judge signed off and said no social, media stalking, and the cops told me not to block him because if he does anything, I have to have evidence, right? So he had his neighbor stalking my profile, and it says non-friend, non-follower, but I know it's his neighbor. So I said, tell your friend that you're not doing him any favors because I'm going to put a PFA on you next, and he's going to get another violation, and then that stopped. But the cop said because it was social media, they can't prevent people from looking at my page. Well, when I have a PFA because he stalks and harasses me, no, that's another violation. And the chief of police in Wyoming actually screamed at me because I blasted that police department on Facebook. I don't know if Melissa, you might remember that, but he came at me because his sergeant told me to make a report with their office in Wyoming because that's where the first one took place. And when I called and left messages and I got to make a report, nobody took me seriously. So they took me seriously when I started blasting that police department on Facebook, and that's when I got a response. I emailed the DAs, I emailed the governor, the mayor, everybody I can think of, trying to get changes made for PFAs. And he screamed at me because he didn't know that his sergeant told me to come. And he actually threatened me and said, do you want me to go online and bash you? Do you think people want to know the truth? Because I'll do it. That came from the chief of Wyoming Police Department. So I screamed, and if I was in front of him, I probably would have been arrested. And I just lost it because it was like, you were supposed to protect me. I'm coming to you because I'm being harassed and stalked and in fear because Melissa knows this guy has screws loose, and I wasn't sure at that time what he was capable of. And he screamed at me, and made himself the victim because I blasted his police department on Facebook. So that's something I'm working with. I'm trying to get laws changed with the Petito family right here in our own community, and it's rough when the cops don't take you seriously. Oh, well, you know, we can only do so much, do better. Because if it was your daughter, your kid, your sister, your mother, they would be all over it. But because it was just another random person with a PFA, it was pushed aside. And I'm working with Lala Clark's family. She was found deceased in Wilkes-Barre. She was deaf and her aunt took her life. So I'm working with her to get laws changed. But the police aren't always there to help, and that needs to change.
I agree.
All right, thank you for that.
Can you hear me?
Thank you, Tiffany. So we are going to move things around a little bit. But before we do that, we put together a video. I do want to say before we show the video that it's hard. Whether you, like I said, were abused or know somebody, the video is going to be difficult either way. Some people might ask us why we're even here today, why we would want to show the video. So Cassie and I, yesterday, had a small event. We went and sold our calendars, which we do have over here. And we had many not so nice comments. I'm going to somewhat censor the conversation that was had. But when we were outside of a grocery store, a public grocery store yesterday, we were selling the calendars to raise money to keep our doors open so that we can help survivors, so that we can help the family members, so we can help the community, so we can hold these events and raise awareness. As someone was walking in yesterday, they, trying to change words here, guys, sorry.
I'll say the words.
Well, Mama's in the room.
He pretty much walked in and accused us of selling our own pussy. He said, "Why would you want to touch yourself and sell this?" And so he was like, "Well, would your mother like to hear you saying that?" He said, "Well, my mother was a sexual assault survivor." So she said,
And
"Well,
she
you should
learned to
understand."
shut her mouth.
And he said, "And my mother learned to shut her mouth." And that was his direct words right to us as we're selling calendars, not ourselves. And he didn't drop it. He got this close to her face and was this close to her face, screaming at her.
And we did let it go the first time, to be honest. You know, as a nonprofit, as a human, you know, you try to just look the other way and understand that people just don't understand. But you don't understand if you've never been there. And I get that. We get that. And we knew that, you know, I say this all the time, we're not selling puppies. If we were, this room would be packed and there'd be a lot more people here. But we're not. We're talking about something that nobody wants to talk about, whether it happened to you or not. So we let it go. And he went in the store. And we let him without commenting. And he came back out of the store and started all over again. This time there was people at our table buying calendars, sharing their stories as he was talking about the prostitutes that were up there, about the whores, and
He was referring to us as the prostitutes and the whores that
we were selling ourselves.
as people were buying them, the calendars to help us. This is not the first time this has happened. It certainly will not be the last, but this is the reason that we are doing this, and this is why it has become so important to us to do events like this and to share not only our stories, but everyone else's at the same time.
We'll talk about it more a little bit later, but one of the things that we had at grand opening was we gave away free pull-ups. There's a lot of people right now that just don't have the money for things. I was able to get pull-ups. We gave away free pull-ups to the parents who are leaving with nothing. We also are providing Narcan. You may have seen it, those of you who follow our social media. I had a very nasty comment that I was helping the community and I was promoting mothers to do drugs. I was told that I cannot have two of those things in the same place, because if you are doing the drugs and need the Narcan, that you shouldn't have your child. I want to explain that a little bit from the bottom all the way to the top. I have a child. I have a special needs child. Every day there is medication in my house. My child goes to the park. It doesn't have to be in my home. He could easily pick it up at school and need Narcan. I also have, most of you guys know, a daughter that's in college. I sent my daughter to school with Narcan, along with a lot of other things, but I sent her to school with Narcan. She's an athlete. She's a human and could be offered drugs and not know it. She could have them put in her drink and not know it. So she needs them. I also am a survivor of domestic violence. My daughter was drugged by my abuser. And the Narcan would have, not in this situation, would have helped her, but if it was a different drug, it would have helped her. I also have a grandmother who is really having a hard time remembering things. She has multiple times taken her medication in one day. Narcan also would have been used in that situation as well. All of those situations are also situations where there are children who need pull-ups, who need diapers, who still need these supplies. It's not just what you hear, the drug addict on the side of the road. Even still, they're still people, and they still deserve another chance. I know a lot of people who did drugs, whether they were forced to or because they wanted to. Doesn't mean they don't want to be here. Doesn't mean that they don't want to be a good parent. They either felt they had no other option, or if that was the only option at that time to survive. So, we know there's a lot of people that aren't going to support what we're doing, so I'm really grateful that all of you do. Now that I went off on that, we do have a video that kind of explains the reason that I just said everything. The topic is really, really hard. It's going to probably be harder for some more than others. So during this time, I'm just asking all of you to try to be silent. If you need anybody before or after, we are going to step aside, but we'll be here if anybody needs to talk. And then we had to move things around a little bit, so we're going to be hearing from Heather after the video. Thank you. So for those of you who do not know who the young girl is at the end, that is Caitlin. Caitlin is not here with us today because she's in a box on the table up here. Caitlin is a fighter, and she deserves to be here. And I truly do believe that she's with us. I had the opportunity to meet her twin sister, Heather. We got to talking. This week is going to be a year since she was taken from this earth, and her twin sister and her family are here, and her twin sister, Heather, is going to talk.
Hi. Today I stand before you not only as a speaker, but as a twin sister whose life changed forever on June 19th, 2025. My twin sister was Caitlin Lanehart. She was my sister, she was my best friend, my other half and one of the best parts of me. Today, just 5 days short of Caitlin's 1-year death anniversary, I stand before you carrying her memory, her story, and a purpose that extends far beyond our family's loss. Caitlin was murdered by the man who was supposed to love, protect, and cherish her. Before we found her, she was missing for 10 long days. 10 days filled with fear, searching, sleepless nights, prayers, and heartbreak. 10 days of desperately hoping for a different ending. And in the end, it was our family who found her and set her free. There are no words powerful enough to explain what that does to a family. When you lose a twin, you don't just lose a sibling, you lose the person who has been beside you since the very beginning of your life. The one who knew your heart before anyone else ever could. The one who shared your childhood memories, your dreams, your struggles, and your joys. Losing a twin is like losing a piece of your own soul. Domestic violence does not just leave bruises, it leaves trauma, it leaves fear, it leaves children without parents, siblings without their best friends, and families trying to survive something they never imagined could happen to them. That's why I stand here today. I stand here to ask for a change. I stand here because domestic violence can affect anyone. It does not care about age, income, education, hometown, or how strong someone appears to be. It hides behind closed doors, behind smiles, behind family photos, behind social media, behind excuses that victims become conditioned to make. One thing I need people to understand is if you have never experienced domestic violence firsthand, or watched someone you love go through it, it can be difficult to understand why someone doesn't just leave. It's never that simple. It's not just physical abuse, it's emotional, psychological, manipulation, fear, isolation, control, and one of the strongest chains it creates is something called a trauma bond. A trauma bond traps someone between love and fear, hope and survival. The abuse becomes intertwined with apologies, promises, affection, guilt, manipulation until the victim begins to believe they cannot survive without the person hurting them. Leaving is often the most dangerous time for a victim. Victims are not weak. They are surviving the best way they know how. I wish more people understood that. I wish more people understood that victims do not need judgment. They need support. They need safe places. They need people who will listen without shaming them. They need resources, protection, and most importantly, they need to know that they are not alone. Because silence can be deadly, but silence is not the only problem. Too often, domestic violence is not taken seriously until it's too late. Warning signs are dismissed, victims ask for help and are not always heard. Families raise concerns, we see the red flags, yet too often, meaningful action comes only after a tragedy has already happened. We cannot continue treating domestic violence as a private dispute or simply a relationship problem. It is a public safety issue. There needs to be a change. Change in how we educate people about domestic violence. Change in how victims are supported when they ask for help. Change in how communities respond when we see the warning signs. And change in how seriously domestic violence is treated before someone's name becomes another headline, another statistic, or another family left grieving. We should not have to lose people we love before action is taken. And there are so many Caitlins in this world. Some are suffering quietly right now. Some are afraid to speak. Some are making excuses for the person hurting them because they still love them. Some are trying to leave but don't know how. And some families, like mine, are left carrying unimaginable grief because help came too late. Today I speak for my sister. I speak for the victims who never got the chance to tell their stories. I speak for the survivors who are still healing. And I speak because Caitlin deserved more. She deserved safety, peace, and she deserved real love. She deserved the opportunity to grow old. I will carry her name with me for the rest of my life, and while nothing will ever bring her back, I refuse to let her story end in silence. If sharing her story helps even one person recognize abuse, if it helps one victim feel understood, if it gives one person the courage to ask for help, then Caitlin's voice is still changing lives. Please remember this, domestic violence is not a private family matter. It is not a relationship drama. It is not something people should have to survive alone. It is real, it is dangerous, and it's happening every single day. So check on your people, believe victims, advocate for a change. To my sister, I miss you every single day. I will fight for you for the rest of my life. I will speak your name and share your story, and I will make sure the world remembers who you are. Forever my twin, and as long as I have a voice, your story will be told.
So the next person that we have coming up, I met last year at an event. Cassie and I have been talking for quite some time, trying to figure out if we were going to have events, what kind of events we were going to have, how we were going to get the word out there that this was a thing that happened here. And I heard somebody speaking about a year ago and sharing their story. That person gave me the idea that we need to speak about it. Listening to her story was extremely powerful. So, next up is Elizabeth.
Do you want to use the microphone?
I think I'm pretty loud. Am I?
All right.
I've been told.
All right. So a lot of people here don't know you, including myself, but personally. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then a little bit about why you're here?
My name is Elizabeth Rodriguez. I'm actually a native New Yorker. I moved to Scranton about 13 years ago. I am a mother of 4 adult children. I am a grandmother, and I am also a proud great-grandmother. Yes. But I am also a victim of domestic violence and child molestation. And I am here because it is something that needs to be spoken about more. It's because when I'm 66, so you imagine back then, you didn't talk about any of this. You held your grief, you held if somebody passed away, if you felt weak, anything. It was taboo. You couldn't talk about anything like this. But times have changed. And I raised 2 daughters, and I've seen the strength that these new women have. But that doesn't change what's out there. I was the victim of a man who, how can I put it? Let's just say, why didn't I stop or say enough when he took a plate of his dinner? Because I said to him, he said, not enough salt, and I said, well, why don't you add some? Split second, I had that plate smashed in my face. And this gone to remind me. Why did I say enough? When he was drunk, I had a month-old son in the bassinet, shaking him. I pick him up, and the next thing I know is I have my heel being smashed on top of my head. And the only thing I could think of was to hold on to my son. Blood gushing down my face, because I wouldn't let him have his son in that condition. Why didn't I say enough? When he made me go home from an event outside, when people take a child and you caught them in the wrong block, and he's in front of you and you're like, go home, let's go home. Well, why didn't I say enough? Well, because I wanted to leave and he didn't want to leave. And he said, oh, you want to leave? I got pushed, well, literally punched in the head, back of the head, kicked in the rear end, half a block until I got home. Why didn't I say enough then? It's a question that we all ask each other, the ones that have been through this. Everybody's answer is different. The one thing I did realize that until I didn't do something for me, until I didn't find out what I was missing, I was gonna put up with this. Until I didn't find out what traumas I had prior to make me feel that this is what I was worth, I was gonna put up with this. So it wasn't just physical abuse. I didn't learn there. Then I went on to emotional abuse, which is just as bad. It tears you down just as bad. But again, my age, who was at max? I wasn't gonna speak to my mom. My mom, he'll be better. He was just angry. But the funny thing is that you would see me, and I was a spitfire. I wouldn't put up with anything from anybody. But I was putting up with this. When did it stop? Not stop. When did I say enough? When I almost landed in jail. On one occasion, it got so bad, he grabbed my daughter by her hair. Her moms, don't mess with our kids. Do what you want to us. But I almost landed in jail because I stabbed him in the back. Then what was going to happen to my kids? But the man didn't. He protected me. He said, you know, Mom. And the last time, grabbed my son by the neck. And I lost it. And I chased him. After so many years, I chased him with a hockey stick. In the middle of the street. And the next thing I know, I come out of a trance with the cops pointing the gun at me because they're telling me to drop that because they don't know what's going on, they just got there. And that for me was when I said enough. And when you think about it, all the reasons that you would say to yourself, I can't do it yet, I'm not financially ready, which is the main reason when you have kids. I don't have a job, I'm not financially ready, I don't know where to go, I don't have no support system. At that point, I didn't think about any of them. I just thought about, I have to get out. We're all different, we all have different reasons. You know, I would never judge anybody. I never judged anyone prior. Because we don't know what their reasons are, why you're going through it. But one thing I do say, you need to speak up. Doing the women empowerment brunches that we do, we see the women in the audience. We see their expressions when they're hearing other women talking about challenges and obstacles and things they've been through. All different things, not just domestic violence. These things are needed. But people can come and gather, feel that they have something, a support system, because they may not have it from the family. They may not have it from friends. A place where they can vent, a place where they can, they don't say a word, shed tears. But this is needed. This is needed because domestic violence is not going to stop. And there isn't enough support. There aren't even enough shelters for women to go to if they have to run out the door. Back then was the same thing. The day that man took a heel to my head, and once he was done, ripped, rolled, blood all over my son and my hands, I had to take a cab to my grandmother's. Whether I liked it or not, didn't want to get involved because there was nothing back then. I'm talking about years ago, it's time now. There should be more. There should be more support. There should be more going on. And I have to say this, and it's just not just women. Men go through this too. The problem is that men's ego won't let them speak. They think that because a woman is hitting them. No, it doesn't matter. gender, man or woman. It doesn't. And there needs more awareness. And I love what you're doing. And I hope you continue doing it. And people will hear, and more, you'll get more people involved. Because it's more than what we think.
When you were in your domestic situation, did you, it just occurred to me, did you ever think that you could fix the situation or it would change if you did something better? He would not do it anymore. He would not do that. Do you ever feel that way at all?
Me, personally, no. No. Because I live on pins and needles. I live day to day, like a robot. Do what you have to do, Liz. Make sure he doesn't get angry. Because I never knew what was said and what. So I never thought about what can I do to change, blah, blah. Really, because it didn't matter. I could have not said a word. And if he got upset over something on TV, that set him off. So I really, myself, no. I just mind your business, stay away from him, and hopefully you have a good month.
I think the biggest thing that stood out to me while you were talking was that you said, it was almost like you deserved it. This was your work. You didn't see any different.
No. Again, like I said, I was a spitfire. People didn't see me as a weak person. And I didn't think I was a weak person. But I was putting up with that. And it was as if that he looked down on me. And only years later did I realize I didn't have the problem, he had the problem. He had traumas. He didn't like himself. And he needed to control me.
So what sense? You do a lot of this work in the community, like advocacy and speaking a lot.
Oh, I don't speak out in public a lot. This is only my second time.
You're really good at
And I
it.
told Megan, she's lucky, when Megan heard me speak, it was just the last minute, one of our speakers had a car accident, and I had to step up. I let everybody else speak, I stay in the back. This is my second time.
You're naturally good at it.
Really?
Yes.
Maybe because lived experiences have to come from here. That's how you'll be able to get inside the people that are out there listening. You resonate with them. They know you understand because they've been through.
What has helped you survive and clearly thrive?
It wasn't until my sister passed away and I started going to counseling that some of the things the puzzles started coming together. Through the counseling, I started understanding. Let me go back. I was not raised in a home where I saw this. I didn't see my mother get beat, my cousins or my aunts. Nope. I didn't even come from a home my mother smoked, and I smoked cigarettes. So, that counseling helped me put together that somewhere in here, some of my past, my trauma, my childhood, was letting me believe that I deserved to be treated that way. I had to dig back and go back to why. No more blaming him. Why me? Why am I letting this happen? In order for me to be able to then fix it and not let it happen again. So the counseling for my sister for grief opened up a lot of things. And that's the problem. Sometimes we don't want to face things because it'll hurt. Other things will come out. But unless you face everything, you won't be able to keep moving forward. So that was my beginning. Getting counseling for my sister. It doesn't happen overnight. It's taken years. Like I said, I'm 66. It's taken years to not forget, because I'm not going to forget. To come to terms with it, stop blaming myself, and not forget, because that is what helped me become stronger. that they're not alone. Because I was there, and there where I thought I was alone. We're living in different times now. No one's alone. Just open up, anybody, cry. Because from those tears, words will come out. Let it out. And it will go slowly start opening up.
Thank you.
I tell you, it's a poet. And I can become so tall.
So we are gonna have one more person speak before we take a small intermission. So Cassie is going to talk a little bit about her story, why we got into this a little bit. Her story is a little bit different than what you've been hearing tonight. We went back and forth on if she didn't think her story was appropriate to share here, to be quite honest. Like I said, it's a lot different than the theme that we've been pretty much going with for tonight. While she has gone through many situations that we've talked about tonight, she's also gone through something else that nobody here has brought up tonight. So I'm gonna turn it over to her. If she talks louder, let her know if you guys can hear.
I'm a quiet person, I'm sorry. So my name is Cassie, obviously.
Yes.
Sorry. Can we hear me now? A little bit. Hello? Got it? We're good? Okay. So my name is Cassie, and I am a survivor of human trafficking. So, to give you a little brief background, my entire childhood, I guess you could say, was engulfed in domestic violence. This was my family. A lot of times people hear human trafficking and they think, okay, this happened in another country. Megan was at the Capitol building and who was it? Who was at the Capitol building with you? The state representative asked her if my life happened in another country. The state representative. And that appalled me because this happens every single day in our own communities, mostly by people that we know. So in my situation, it was my family. My mother was 13 when she had me, 14 when she had my brother, 15 when she had my sister, and she could not take care of us. She gave us to our aunt and uncle, and they did whatever they wanted with us. I lived in that home for 14 years. I was born in the United States. I lived in New York. And eventually, long story short, the police came and got us, me and my siblings. I have 7 siblings that were in the home. And we grew up the rest of the time in foster care. So that doesn't set a good precedent for your adult life, right? So I grew up in foster care. I was told that my entire life was wrong. So that was the first thing that was told to me. Everything that I have lived up until that point was wrong, and it was not okay, and all the things that somebody can say about someone's life being wrong. And so I believed that I was bad because I lived this life, and everybody's telling me that this is wrong, and I didn't understand because this was my normal life. Like, I thought this was fine. I believed this entire thing was just fine. And so I internalized that, and I believed that I was a terrible person. I must be the worst person on this planet, and I didn't talk to anybody, didn't say a word for 6 months. Eventually I talked a little bit more, and I kind of had to learn how to live life appropriately like an average person. But it was just very hard. I refused therapy. They tried to send me to therapy. I refused to talk. I wasn't doing that. Eventually, I turned 18. I emancipated out of foster care, and my siblings were left in foster care. I decided that I was going to take it upon myself to take custody of them, and that meant that I had to go to therapy, and I actually had to try. So that opened up a lot of stuff that I had dissociated from, a lot of stuff that I had refused to acknowledge happened to actually happen to me. And it was a nightmare. That healing journey was not, it's not over, but it was not fun. Children's Services let me take custody of my siblings. So there's 2 of my children, legal custody, back there, and I have 2 more who are teenagers. It's not easy. It was not something that just happened and, like, you know, we live happily ever after. It's a struggle every day. Some of my siblings were there. They lived the abuse with me, and that's a lot for children to work through. That's a lot. So it's a lot of crying and screaming and, you know, stuff like that. So I don't want to make this sound like it's super easy. But yeah, so anyways, long story short, I ended up fighting for custody of them. I ended up married. Thinking, okay, here we go. I thought this marriage was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. This dude was so nice. He would walk to the store and buy me something if I really wanted it, right? Wrong. I thought that this was normal. He would, like, antagonize almost. He would make me feel like I was doing stuff that was completely wrong. But, like, I believed that I was doing it wrong. So I didn't know. Like, I just thought that I was crazy and that I deserved everything that happened. Because based on my life, this tracks. This was the easiest thing that happened to me, was being married to this guy, right? So, I decide that I'm just going to stay with him and I'm going to tell everybody that this is fun. And, I actually wasn't going to intend on talking about this today, but, my husband came with 3 children. So not only did he come with, or he came into, we blended a family, so I brought my siblings who I have custody of, and his 3 children are now living in the same home. And one day, his 9-year-old son, my stepson, came up to me, or he was sitting there, and my husband was there. And he full discloses that my husband was sexually abusing him. In front of my husband, in front of me. I believed I was going to die that night. Because why? Like, I mean, obviously he said this, right? Like, and I don't fault him for saying that, but it was the situation, like, right in front of him. I thought my life was ended. Like, I didn't know what to do. So I put all of the children in my bedroom. I barricaded the door because he took my keys. And the next morning we left. I left my house. I left everything. Because at that point, that was my why. You can do whatever you want to me, and I felt like I deserved that. But as soon as you brought that kid into it, that was it. Like, I could not. So we left, we walked with nothing. He took all of our money, he took everything that we have, and it was a nightmare and a half. But when Elizabeth was talking, like, it really resonated with me when you said, like, you felt like you deserved it. Like, this entire time, I felt like I deserved it, and it wasn't until therapy after where I realized, like, I didn't deserve any of that, and no one here deserves any of that, and no one anywhere else deserves any of that. Like, people have an inherent value, and that's not something that a lot of people realize. And so, it's just really important to me that we started this. When I got out of my trafficking situation, it was a nightmare. Nobody's equipped to handle that. I went to therapist after therapist. I would bring court documents. I would bring, like, all this stuff, and people would be scared. They would tell me they weren't equipped to handle it. They couldn't do therapy with me. Like, they weren't equipped for that much trauma. That's what I got a lot. I was turned away a lot. So eventually, I just felt like I wasn't worth it. Like, I didn't have any worth for anybody to, fight for. One day there was a therapist who did, so that was nice. But that's what I felt like. There was a closed door everywhere I turned around. When I left with all of these children, I didn't have anywhere to go, and there was doors slamming in my face left and right. I was prepared to live in my car. So that's why we started this. There isn't a lot of places to go where it's just non-judgmental completely. A lot of places judged me when I left. A lot of places. And so, that's my why. That's my why of why this became a thing. How we both collaborated to make this a thing for survivors. I don't know. That's all. Thank you guys for listening to that.
So we are going to take a brief intermission. We do have basket raffles up here. We have tumblers and mugs, shirts. We are going to be cutting a cake. I believe Heather and her family are going to be heading out. They do have a very long drive home. So if you guys during intermission want to go up, take a look at anything, if you have any questions or want to speak to anybody who's already spoke or the family, you can do so at this time, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
I got something to say. Also, obviously this is very hard. Can you all hear me? This is very hard, like, topics and conversations. So we have therapy cards, if anybody's interested. We have a flyer. Yeah, it has local resources and national resources if anybody is interested in that. Like, we will not judge you if you take one, or take one for a friend. Like, we definitely want you to get, like, help or talk to somebody if you need to. That's all.
And I guess it was brought to my attention that some people had no idea what was on the cake or why. So I'm gonna pass it off to Heather.
So on the cake is 11/11, which in this pictures you could see it was on her right side. So a couple years ago she got real spiritual into looking at her signs and angel numbers, and 11/11 would show up everywhere for her, and she would always message us several times a day, every day, the last 3-4 years, saying 11/11 make a wish, and it just always stuck with her. And she always believed that those were her angel numbers and her spirit guides giving her her signs, and we ran with it because it's just who she was.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Heather, that's mine too.
Yeah, everyone, a lot of people, then after she had passed, so many people reached out and said, I see it everywhere. I said, that's her. That's her.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
powerful number.
Yes, it is.
Heather, can I just say something, please? You said, you know, she's here with us, did you hear that person's phone call off? Yeah.
No.
Exact same, somebody's
Yes.
phone rang.
Oh.
It's a little bit up at 3:30.
Mine's lit up at 333. 111 was also a number that she's seen a lot, but 11/11 was, yeah. 111.
Okay.
So this is kind of the part that I've like been dreading all night, other than praying that there was somebody sitting out there when I walked through these doors. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about how I got involved with all of this. In doing so, it goes into our next speaker. Like I said to you guys, I have a 6-year-old. I also have a 20-year-old. My 6-year-old that I have, like I said, he's special needs. He also, his father was my abuser. When I met him, like you've heard so many times tonight, he was great. He did everything that you're supposed to do in a relationship. Took me out, bought me whatever I needed, loved my family until he didn't, loved my children, my daughter at the time, that was his best friend, until he hit her and drugged her. Even then, through everything that I went through with him, I loved him. I went back, and I went back, and I went back. I thought that I had to go back. I thought my mom would be mad if I left. I didn't want to disappoint my family. I didn't want to disappoint my friends. Like Cassie said, I felt that I could do something to change it. I went through everything trying to figure out what I was doing wrong to make him do this. And of course, every story is different, but in the beginning it was just slowly like isolating me from my friends and family. I didn't actually realize until I got out of the relationship that I have no friends. I didn't have anybody, which is also why I didn't leave, because I wasn't really sure who to call. I had my family, but I also told my family for years that nothing was happening, that The reason I wasn't going places is because I was really busy. My kids were in sports. Things were just, life. Shit happens. I had things to do. And that obviously was not the case. I think for me, the hardest part of all of this is the children. We mentioned before about talking to the kids in school, and what age do you bring it up to your kids? You know, they have all sex ed in school, and what age was that? To be honest, by the time they have that conversation in class, they've already done it. They already know what it is. They talk about drugs and alcohol, and they've already drank it. They've already done them. My son was in the NICU, and by the time we came home, everything had already started. I see things now that I didn't even know was happening at the time. For instance, while my son was in the NICU, less than a week old, his father was almost removed in handcuffs. I took that as he's a loving father and he cares about his son. Obviously, that was not the case. He kept me home so he could take care of me. That's what I saw. That's how I took it. I called between me, friends, neighbors, family. I lived next to a bar. The people at the bar. The police were at my house. Probably 3-4 dozen times. And every time I sent them away. Not him. I did. I sent them away because they were going to leave that day and I was going to be stuck in that house. I've said this to a few people here. When the police show up at your house, they come in and they talk to you. They talk to him. And then they leave. And then you get beat. Then you get raped. Then you get screamed at. You get threatened. And then you call the cops. And then we do it all over again the next day. But one thing that was very difficult for me was I had the chief of police friends with my abuser. He would get him out of everything. He went to jail. He was out the next day. He had record a mile long. I do now check everybody before I speak to them. Had I checked the paper, had I ran a background check, who the hell runs a background check on your boyfriend, your girlfriend? I do now. Maybe you do if you're a survivor. Now you've learned your lesson. But I didn't. Had I would have known that I would have been girl 4. I would have known that he broke a 2-year-old's leg. I would have known that he put that 2-year-old's mother in the hospital. Funny story, that 2-year-old's mother was also my best friend at one time. I didn't believe her when she told me that I should leave. I stayed and told her she was crazy. There was no way that he would do that. Thankfully, her and I are friends. When we went to court, the judge said, if you can come up with these other 4 women, we could do something. I reached out to every single one of them, including the mother of his other child that is here because he raped her when she was 15 years old. All of them told me that they would rather die than come to court with me because that would bring him back into their lives. Unfortunately, I have been away from him now for 4 years, and he's still not gone. We still deal with it every day. I just recently had to move for the 3rd time in less than a year because of him. My children are still suffering, and there's really nothing I can do. Had I go through it every day, had I just listened to that girl that was my best friend at one time and not told her she was crazy, I wouldn't be where I am. So back to the police. I worked, Commonwealth Ambulance used to be around, and I worked Commonwealth Ambulance. I was really close with my boss. One day I felt that this was probably as bad as my situation was going to get. Granted, I thought that before. But I texted him one day when things were crazy at my house, and I said, I need help. I can't call 911. He's going to see it on my phone. If he finds out that I called 911, I'm screwed. He also is friends with the police. So the moment that goes across the scanner, as I said, the chief of police was his best friend. I'm going to be dead before the police get here. So we had a plan. He called paramedics to my house. He called the police, like who he trusted. My call never went across the radio. It was completely a silent call, and 2 paramedics showed up at my house. I never knew what paramedics were coming to my house. Oddly enough, prior to the paramedics coming to my house, I knew who they were. Those paramedics have literally saved my ass multiple times. Whether it was my family members, they were there. And now, me and my family again. This particular incident, he had tried to take my son and run with him. He obviously, like I said, has a long history of abuse. I was not going to let him take my son. He was actively using meth. So my daughter did everything that she could at 14 years old to hold on to my son. My daughter ended up hurting her brother, my son, in an attempt to save him. My daughter to this day has a very hard time dealing with the fact that she had hurt her brother. Unintentionally, of course. She saved his life. I really believe that. He would have left, God knows what he would have done. So he had bruises on him for how hard she was squeezing him. My daughter also had bruises from how hard my boyfriend at the time was squeezing her. When the paramedics came to my house, it was these 2 sitting here today, Jen and Kenny. I would not be here. I 100% know that if it wasn't for them. He would have killed me. And I say that not because I'm sure we've all felt that way in a situation before, but I know he would have. Because he tried to hurt them. Somebody he didn't know, somebody he's never met. They didn't do anything to him, but yet he was still taking them to the ground. He was still trying to kill Kenny. He didn't want them in his way. When most police officers come to your house, they hand you this pink slip of paper with a number to call, and they say, call this number in the morning. They'll help you. There's resources out there for you. And then they drive away and you're left with that pink slip of paper, that your abuser doesn't see. It's magical paper. And then you go back inside with them. I have a stack of those papers. I got a lot. This time I didn't get a stack of papers. Well, I have lots of stacks of papers. But I didn't go back in my house with that pink piece of paper. I had 2 paramedics that gave up shit that day. One in particular that didn't let me go back in that house. She loaded me in her car and we took a drive. And we went to the police station.
And she held my hand, and she filled out the paperwork with me, alongside of me, and would not let me leave. And she said, he's going to kill you if you stay. And that would be our next speaker. Glenn.
Hello. I'm a paramedic. So I know, I didn't quite want to go this route. But this took a little turn. So, yes, I am a paramedic. And I was with Megan and my husband that day. But I'm also a police officer. So I know we touched on that earlier about police, but the reason why I'm different is because I come with compassion. So I want to thank everyone for being here today to discuss an issue that impacts every community, regardless of age, race, income level, profession, and background. When most of you think of domestic violence, they often picture physical abuse. While physical violence is certainly one form of domestic abuse, it's a much larger picture. Domestic violence can include emotional abuse, psychological manipulation, intimidation, stalking, sexual abuse, financial control, isolation from family and friends, and threats designed to maintain power and control over another person. At its core, domestic violence is about power and control. Victims often Victims often face challenges that many people on the outside cannot fully understand. And the common question is, why didn't they leave? The reality is, leaving an abusive relationship is often the most dangerous. It's the dangerous time for a victim. Fear of retaliation, financial dependence, concern for children, emotional attachment, cultural pressures, lack of support can create significant barriers to that leaving. As professionals and members of the community, it is important that we avoid victim blaming and instead focus on the understanding and the complexities of abusive relationships. Domestic violence does not discriminate. Victims can be women and men. They can be young adults, seniors, professionals, first responders, healthcare workers, teachers, or stay-at-home parents. Abuse occurs in every neighborhood, every socioeconomic class, and every profession. The impact extends far beyond the victim. Children who witness domestic violence often experience long-lasting emotional and psychological effects. Even when they are not physically harmed, exposure to violence in the home can affect their development, relationship, academic performance, and mental health for years to come. As law enforcement officers, healthcare providers, advocates, educators, and community members, we each play a role in responding to domestic violence. Sometimes that role is making an arrest. Sometimes it's documenting injuries thoroughly. Sometimes it is connecting with the victim with resources and support services. And sometimes it's just listening without judgment. For law enforcement, every domestic violence should be approached with professionalism, caution, and compassion. These calls are often among the most unpredictable and dangerous situations we encounter. Emotions are high, circumstances can change rapidly, and victims may experience trauma that affect how they communicate and respond. Our responsibility is not only to investigate crimes, but also to ensure that the victims feel heard, respected, and supported throughout the process. It is equally important to hold offenders accountable. Domestic violence is not just a family matter, it is a crime. Accountability sends a message that abuse will not be tolerated and that victims deserve protection under the law. Community awareness and education remain critical. The more we understand the warning signs of abuse, the more opportunities we have to intervene before violence escalates. Warning signs may include excessive jealousy, controlling behavior, isolation from family and friends, monitoring communication, threats, intimidation, and repeated patterns of manipulation. If you know someone who is experiencing abuse, remember that your role is not to force them to make decisions. Instead, offer support, provide information, and help them to connect with resources when they are ready. Today, I encourage everyone to remember that domestic violence is not just a personal issue, it is a community issue. By working together, supporting victims, holding offenders accountable, and continuing to educate ourselves, we can help create a safer home and stronger community. Thank you for your time and your attention. I'm not a public speaker. This is all Megan.
So we just opened up our first location in Peckville. We tried a few times. Never went the way we thought. And I mean, we tried a few times. Cassie and I don't live in the same state. I had no idea, honestly, who she was the day I sent her a picture of my driver's license and my social, and said, let's do this. We met when I was working for another organization, local organization. I was working on a hotline, and I had a phone call from a girl looking for information, and that girl was like, can you help me? And I had to tell her no, because she wasn't from this area. That was something that happened all the time on the hotline. Can't help you unless you're from that area. Can't help you. Sorry, I can't help you. It sucks, because I still wonder to this day how many of those people that called that hotline that I told them that I couldn't help are dead. So the girl that called this time, she said she's trying to start her own nonprofit. Correction, she told me she did start her own nonprofit. She had plans, she had girls, boys, she had everything. There was clients everywhere. It seemed like the greatest organization ever. I was getting a new friend, how cool. And then Cassie found her. And guess what? Cassie was in this great organization too, with all these clients. Yeah, love it.
So we both find the same lady. Somehow, some way, through social media. This was dumb. This was so dumb of us. But we did it. We thought this was great. Oh, well, she didn't find her through social media. I did. So we joined this organization. We moved up in this organization so fast. It was too good to be true. And Megan and I, we were not allowed to talk to each other. So this owner of the organization kept every single person separate, and we were not allowed to talk to each other. So one day, she had this, was it a client that she had or something? And this founder of this organization disagreed with something the client had said. And instead of taking this, offline or maybe private, like to a phone call or face to face, this lady bashed this survivor and dragged her name, made group chats, and dragged her name through everybody. And I said, I'm done. I will not. This is not something I signed up to do. This is not for my values. Megan was like, she's done, but we weren't able to talk to each other. We had invested so much money, so much time to work with this lady and a couple other ladies to build up an organization that we thought would help people. And then she went and thought it was okay to tear people apart. Whether you agree with them or not, it's not okay. So I backed out. I said, you're either gonna like tear my name down so much that I'm never gonna be able to help people ever again, or I'm gonna go to jail. Like, she was that bad. And so I said, I'm out. I don't care what you do. I fully expected her to trash my name and put my name everywhere and stuff like that. I ended up calling Ned, and I was like, so I know you don't know me very well. Like, we've heard of each other. We worked together online, right? We never met in person at that point. And I was like, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm walking. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And she was like, I feel the exact same way. We had this really long conversation about how we felt that people should be treated. We felt that a leader of an organization should treat not only the clients in the organization, but the general public. And through that, and through many conversations and many video chats and many just, I don't know, so much time together, we decided that we were just going to build our own organization. We didn't like the way most organizations ran that say they're helping people. Just like Meg said, how many people did she have to turn away because they couldn't help them at that organization because of the laws, because of the rules? I was working at a children's shelter, and if the children that needed help did not live in the same county, we had to turn them away. I was putting children on the streets because I couldn't answer their needs. I couldn't, based on the rules and the policies and procedures of the organization, I could not do anything. So we talked about it a lot, and that's really truly how this became a thing. So we ran under a different name for a while, and it wasn't going well. We were clashing with other organizations who coincidentally had the same name. And so we said scratch everything, because at that point we were pulling people out of their domestic situations and sexual assault situations. We were actually finding them, or they were finding us and calling. We had a hotline, and we were pulling them out. We were safety planning with them. We were talking with them and finding them resources all throughout the United States. And while that's great, we were just dropping them off into another organization and then just trusting that they were going to get the help they needed. Just hoping that they weren't going to go back. So we weren't really doing anything but saying, hey, you can get out. Because how many of those people went back? So we completely scratched everything, rebranded, had an argument with the IRS, and then we completely decided that instead of yanking people out, because a lot of people do that, and honestly, you can't force someone to leave. They're going to leave when they're ready. So you can educate them, you can empower them to make that decision for themselves, but to yank them out and then not support them in the after, we were just setting people up for failure. So we started with education, advocacy, and empowerment, because we felt that those three things were what really was going to make an impact later on. So educating our communities. We have a middle school and a high school that has asked us to come in and educate on safe relationships, domestic violence, and stuff like that. So we're going to start with educating our communities, educating therapists and police officers and paramedics on, okay, if you come across this situation, here is what you should say or could say to help them. Advocacy. So we're going to stand up for these people. I'm going to have your back. If you say you need help and you need to go file a PFA, I'm going to go with you. Or send someone I trust with you or something like that. But I'm going to be here. You need to call somebody because you just really feel like all you can do is just go back. That's the safest option. Maybe not the safest option, but the best option for you is to go back. How many of us have been there? Or I can't really do this. I need to go back. The only way of life is to go back. And, okay, so maybe you just need to talk it through with someone. That's connection. Real healing begins in connection. People need connection. And a lot of survivors, like many of us in this room, lost that connection. So we often don't think we need it. And then the empowerment. That's what we're doing tonight. We're giving people an opportunity to share their stories. And this is recorded and probably will be posted somewhere. But people not only are able to share their stories, every single person in this room is supporting every single person that's sharing their story. And that in and of itself is healing. That is doing something. Because I guarantee you there was people that were not sure if they wanted to share their story here tonight. And maybe next event, They're gonna walk in and they're gonna say, I can do this. I can tell my story so that somebody else doesn't feel so alone. And the more empowered somebody feels, the more healed they become. So that is how Voices of Broken became our thing. So, as an organization as a whole, we have a business here. So it's like a drop-in center. So like there is everything you can think of. There's go bags. So if you're just walking out, a lot of the organizations here don't offer go bags. If you're just walking out of a situation, there's a bag and it has everything essential in it, like toothbrushes, clothes, underwear, socks, feminine hygiene products, shampoo, and it goes all the way from newborn to 2X. So we have bags for every single size that we can. We have prevention, harm reduction stuff. I think you touched on that. So Narcan and STD testing and pregnancy tests, because sometimes it's not safe for you to go other places. We don't have to tell anybody you stopped in. We don't have to put it on a medical record that you got a pregnancy test. So sometimes people feel more safe coming into a spot like that. Forget what else we offer. So if you're talking away. We offer support groups. They're going to be in person here. And we're going to have them for domestic violence, for sexual assault. We can have them for men and women. I don't think we can have them for children, just because of legality. We'll have to think about that. But we're going to do it virtually too. So obviously I live in Ohio. There's a lot of people where I live that need stuff, need support groups. We have requests for support groups from people in Washington. So I don't want to turn anybody away. So our option was, okay, we'll do a virtual one. We can get on a Zoom. You don't even have to show your face. If you want to be again, connection. Connection is where healing is begun. We're small, obviously, but this is really important to us, and we really hope you see it, and it could become important to you guys too.
Thank you.
So, just real quick, kind of added somebody here because of how heavy the topics were tonight. We mentioned that we opened a location. In that office, we have therapists and nutritionists. Obviously, that's really important. It was really important for me to find a location that was appropriate for what we were dealing with people who are trauma-informed. So I have one of the therapists from the office.
Sorry. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Cassidy Dorson. I am a licensed professional counselor in the office that Meg was talking about. I'm also a mom of 2 daughters and a business owner. I own Inner Soul Counseling and Wellness. But another part of my identity is I'm also a survivor of domestic violence. So first I just want to thank Megan for inviting me. I know that, if anybody's met Megan, you can tell that she was meant to do this work. And so as soon as I met her, we just kind of clicked on helping people, really, on the fundamentals of just helping another human being. And so thank you for having me here to speak. But more importantly, thank you for putting together such a powerful and important event. I also want to thank everyone that spoke tonight. I know that it's really difficult to get up here and basically put out your most vulnerable information in front of people. But it's so important because domestic violence is a real issue, and without, you could hear about domestic violence, you could read about domestic violence, but it's different to really see someone's face and hear their voice and experience almost what they went through with them. And so, I just thank you guys for being so brave and for coming out and sharing your stories, because it might seem like this is a small room with a few people, but you never know who you're going to impact, and sometimes just planting a seed could save someone's life. So, thank you for everyone that came. So I also wanted to say that as I mentioned, I am also a survivor of domestic violence, and this has impacted me both personally and professionally, of course. So I thought about what do I want to share, right? Do I want to share something more personal, more professional, somewhere in the middle? And basically the only point that I really want to get across is how crucial it is to have support. It doesn't matter if you're going to your friends or family, if they're supportive, that's wonderful. Or if you're going to a counselor, a therapist, or if you're just going to sport groups or events like this, like it is all just as meaningful and impactful because as Cassie talked about, really what matters is connection, and finding that connection with another person who has experienced what you have is so important. It makes you feel less alone, but also it really takes your power back. When you go to therapy and you start talking about these things, the reason why it might take months or years to really feel like you're strong enough to leave the situation is because there's never just physical violence, right? There's never just sexual violence. There is this layer of emotional violence that is present in all domestic violence cases where somebody really manipulates your mind and maybe changes your mind a little bit to think that whatever they want you to think, right? And so when you're going to therapy, you're really unlearning a lot of those things, but you're also empowering yourself, teaching yourself new things, finding ways that even after you leave the situation, you're not going to go back to another one, right? So, yeah, I just want to say that if anybody is experiencing domestic violence right now, or if anybody has ever experienced it in the past, please just work on building your support system. Reach out to somebody, go to therapy. I know it's hard, I know it's vulnerable, but it will help, it really will. And for me personally, it took months and months of therapy to leave my situation. And then even after that, it took me years to heal from all the trauma and things that came out of that abuse as well. So don't give up. Keep going back. Keep trying. If you don't like the therapist, get a new one. There's so many people out there that are willing to help you. I know they talked a little bit about going to a therapist and them saying, I'm just not equipped to help you. And I know that could be discouraging. But instead of taking it as a discouragement, take it as, okay, that's not someone that can help me. I'm going to find someone that can help me and that will help me. Just don't give up. Keep going back. And lastly, I just want to say that it's never too late to put yourself first and start healing. Thank you again for having me. I do have some business cards over there, so if anybody is needing a counselor or knows someone that might need a counselor, feel free to take one of my business cards, text me, email me, however you want to reach me. I will be able to help you. And if I can't, I will find someone that can. And then, yes, and I just wanted to say that I am accepting new clients both in person and virtually, so if you feel like you can't leave your house but you still want to talk to someone, I can still help you. And I do have a sliding scale rate, so if you can't afford therapy, come to me, talk to me, especially about domestic violence. This is close to my heart, so I will help you. All right, thank you so much.
So we're gonna start closing things up. If anybody wants any last minute raffles or anything, before we end, we head over there now. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody, the speakers. For as nervous as I was about the whole event, I had every one of the speakers here say the exact same thing, and it really helped. It also really helped knowing that when I told the speakers that it just might be me and you in that room, they were still willing to come. So it means a lot. So I just want to say thank you to the speakers, to the loved ones of the speakers for supporting them, to the survivors. Obviously, you're not alone. To the friends and the family that showed up tonight, thank you. My family, thank you for sitting there listening to all this, for probably hearing things that you didn't want to hear. My boyfriend, thank you for coming. Sometimes when we go through things like domestic violence, sexual assault, trafficking, we never really think as survivors about the next person. And I don't mean the next person that is abused by them. I mean the next person that we're in a relationship with. I know Cassie and I have talked about it a lot.
but it's hard. Because of things that we went through, we take it out on the next person. And I know a lot of the survivors that I have talked to said the exact same thing. There's really no support for the next relationship. You know, they're kind of supposed to just suck it up and deal with your trauma that they had nothing to do with or not be a part of. We lived in a world where we fought our entire time to survive, so we don't really know what a normal relationship is supposed to look like at all the time. So, if you guys are in another relationship after your abuse, or thinking about it, please take a minute to think about that person as well, because your trauma does rub off on the next person. He's hiding his face, but it sucks for them. It's hard. You know, I know there's been times that because of the things that I went through, he'll talk with his hands, and you know, I do one of these because I'm just waiting to get hit. Or he says something, and I have to say something because I have to defend myself, right? They wear something that that person wore. They have the same cologne, they have the same car, or you think you just see them every time. Or, in our case, we've had, so you start screaming, you get in an argument, you're pissed off, and you call them their name. We've all done it. Please tell me I'm not the only one here. It's a habit. You're so used to just screaming and fighting that you tend to not even know why the hell you're fighting anymore. I know that's where we're at. What are you fighting for? Because you're used to it? Because it's normal? Because that's what you deserve? So you continue to do it. So, I love you. And I'm sorry. But I just want to let you guys know, if you think that you're being an ass to somebody who gives a crap about you, you probably are.
I met Meg 10 years ago, and she told me something that I'm going to tell her right now. But you're different. And you're going to do it.
Hey, Cassie. I love you. None of this. If you didn't believe in me, all the times I called you at random hours, asking you what the heck I'm supposed to do next, I'd probably be in a movie bed somewhere.
Would not have got this far.
The things that we have gone through in the short time that we've known each other are ridiculous. We've both had to move out of our homes. We've gone to homeless shelters. We've separated families. But we've also managed to start an organization together. And when I'm saying a very short time, I mean a very short time. Less than a year. Oh, we're coming up on a year. But we've gone through a lot in the last year. Yep. But we've gone through a lot. So if you could find even that one person to lean on, you have to lean on them. If you think you don't have anybody, you do. You met all of them in the room tonight. I know Lorianne and I used to work together
another organization, there's people there that do care. I look around the room tonight, and from the people that even were here before, and there was people here that I was really nervous about talking in front of. People I worked with, my family, my friends, people who saved my life, my son, teachers. I didn't expect them to be here, but it means a lot that you guys showed up. So I just want to say thank you, and Cass is gonna close you guys out, so I'm always in more of your time.
Danny, would you like to get a group picture with Jill? Would you like a group picture?
Yeah, when she said it.
I actually think you did a great job closing this out. I just want to say your past may be part of your story, but it does not get to write the ending. So we are all living proof of that today, and I mean that with my whole heart. So thank you guys, all of you, for helping us build a future where every story matters, every voice counts, and no one has to walk this journey alone. So that is it. We have a raffle. We're gonna pull the raffle before you leave. Don't leave. Well, I guess we could call you, but we're gonna pull the raffle, and then you guys are good. Oh, there's one piece of cake left, and I'm not taking it back to Ohio. Somebody better eat it.
I do have one more thing for the speakers. For the 3 speakers. The 3 speakers. Tiffany, Elizabeth, Jen. Can you guys just come up here 1 second? No. You can cut that, right? Cassie. Yes. Can you get her? Here.
Thank you. Where are we looking?
Yeah.
Nobody told us. Somebody say aye.
Wait, can I get one?
We lost.
Sorry, it's been
Now you guys
one thing. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
So that's